I'm Sam Stanier from the University of Cambridge, and my role in this session is to give you an overview of the joint research activities we've been performing over the last 12 months or so, and to give you a breakdown of what's yet to come. And what I'll do along the way is introduce the three speakers that are going to deliver talks for the remainder of this session as well, focusing mainly on innovation of the research facilities. So what are our joint research activities aims? Well, first of all, we're trying to integrate and synergize our experimental research infrastructure in disciplines around geotechnics effectively, so subsurface behavior, engineering and data science. We want to improve our physical modeling and measurement technique capabilities beyond the present state of the art, and so we've been assessing critically where we are in terms of our abilities currently. And we also want to provide guidance on the integration of data management methods. So we want to look at the data that we're creating through our transnational access and make sure we make it as available as possible to other people who might want to use it in numerical modeling research. We've basically got three work packages in our joint research activities. The first is on guidance for transnational access and joint research activities management. The second, work package 9, which is the focus of today's session, is, as I said, on the innovation of the research infrastructure. And then we've got work package 10 on data management and standardization. And these are all delivered collaboratively across the transnational access providers within GeoLab. As you'll go through, you'll notice some coloration of the various deliverables. Green means it's complete, orange is in progress, and red is a future activity. Anything that you see in green is now available on our online knowledge platform, which has been developed by KPMG. So as I said, the main focus of this session is on work package 9. And so we're going to have three presentations from Miguel, Luke and Timin Lei a little bit later on, exploring in a bit more depth three of the main deliverables we've developed as part of work package 9. As I said, my job here is to give you an overview of everything that we've done so far. So in work package 8, what we've been trying to do is provide enough clear information about our transnational access facilities to allow an applicant to develop a feasible proposal from the outset. To do that, we've developed training materials in video form and report form that people can sift through in order to work out where their proposed project is likely to be best hosted within the GeoLab consortium. And we've been synthesizing all of these outputs via the knowledge platform developed by KPMG, as I suggested earlier. So just to give you some examples of the deliverables we've been generating. In work package 8, task 8.1, we've developed this inventory of the facilities. We've got technical specifications and portfolios of previous experiments that have been performed to give people a flavor of what's possible. And this boils down to a deliverable where we've been in a report format created tabulated details of who the main contact points are for each piece of apparatus, what specific bits of kit each infrastructure, each facility actually has that you could use in your experimental developments as part of the transnational access. And again, at the end, examples of previous experiments that have been performed, just to give you some inspiration. In task 8.2, we've got workshop materials. We've got the GeoLab user manual, which goes into more depth about how you would use the apparatus and equipment available at each facility, so that effectively as a transnational access user, you can hit the ground running when you arrive for your 1 or 2 weeks of access after you've secured a proposal through the GeoLab call for proposals. We've also added webinar materials on there and other training videos for bits of local specific knowledge that would be useful for when you come to take advantage of transnational access. And this is just an example from TU Darmstadt of some of those outputs in terms of a slide set that was given in the webinar. So again, this is just I guess a shorthand version of the report format where we've got key details and examples of what's possible at this particular facility. And this exists for every facility, so you can very quickly flick through and get a feel for where your project is likely to be best hosted. So there's lots of details in here, details about how samples are created in the facility, what sort of tests are possible, and there's a summary at the end to give you a one-page overview of what is available there. Also in work package 8, we've got the integration of the management of the joint research activities and dissemination of the results. And the main activities here are the outcomes of the advanced workshops that we're holding at each of these annual events. So last time we had a session where we were talking about guidance for transnational access, how to best encourage people to come and make use of the transnational access, and what specific aspects of modelling they were most interested in. So there was a lot of talk at the last session about 3D printing, and we'll come on to how that's fed through into our work package 9 activities later on. The session this afternoon is on innovation of the research infrastructure, and again, we're going to be focusing on what's required in order to perform the sort of modelling we want to perform tomorrow in relation to critical infrastructure performance. The final workshop is going to be on data management, and that will come around this time next year. So in terms of impacts, what's Work Package 8 been doing? Well, it's created these descriptions that facilitate the effective identification of appropriate transnational access for project calls. We've got the training materials to allow people to get a feel for what sort of experiments they can perform and to be semi-prepared when they turn up to carry out that transnational access. We've got these webinar activities that we've been using to raise awareness of forthcoming calls for proposals, and we've got our workshops to try and engage our transnational access user groups into feeding back what they need in order to develop successful proposals with us. On to the main part of this session then. What's Work Package 9 been doing? Well, we started by critically appraising the capabilities of the GeoLab facilities that we have across the consortium and assessing specifically what our physical modelling capabilities are with respect to modelling climate change, extreme events, and the effects of ageing on critical infrastructure. We've been looking to identify next generation materials, sensors, and model manufacturing approaches, and the next 3 talks will go into that in a fair bit more detail. We've also been looking at expanding capabilities in geophysics-based field characterization. And finally, we're working on a deliverable at the moment where we're looking at the deployment of high-density 3D spatial measurement approaches, all the way from model scale in the laboratory up to field scale deployments out in the real world. So that's what we've been doing. What are our outputs so far? We've got a review report on experimental challenges and technology readiness, which I believe Alex is going to give you a little bit of a flavour of at the start of this afternoon's session. In there, what we've done is looked at the technology readiness level of various aspects of modelling of problems related to climate change, extreme events, and ageing. And so we've defined here where we think we are at the kick-off of GeoLab, and in order effectively to come up with some direction about where we think we need to improve, what areas are ripe for further development here. And so we can see things sitting down at TRLs 1, 2, maybe even 4 and 5, perhaps target areas for joint research activities to try and improve our capability there. Also in Work Package 9, we've got a set of guidelines on best approaches to simulate physical models involving the targets for the GeoLab project overall. In here, specifically, what we're looking at is making sure that across the different facilities, we've got some standards in terms of how we produce samples so that we can have consistency across our models. And we've started in this report by looking at the problems that we're targeting, identifying how those things would be modeled in the lab, looking at equipment that's available to model those phenomena in the lab, and then in more detail, looking at the sort of sensors and techniques that we might use to make measurements in those sorts of model tests. So that report goes into various aspects of modelling related to climate change, extreme events, and ageing in quite some detail. And Miguel Cabrera, I believe, is going to give us a more in-depth overview of the contents of that report shortly. We've then got a report on best strategies to test new materials, new sensing and manufacturing methods at model scale and use in the field. Luke Terrell is going to go into this in more depth with us later. But there's a specific focus in this report on 3D printing, which came out of the last advanced workshop that we held last year, where there was a lot of interest in 3D printing approaches. And so in this report, we delve into the potential use of 3D printing all the way from the grain scale through to developing clay models with spatially varying strength, all the way up to 3D printing of actual buildings and structures. So as I said, 3D printing has become a particular focus of that report, and we'll likely hear a bit more about that later on. Deliverable 9.4 is a set of guidelines on the use of remote sensing and geophysical techniques in 3D and 4D characterization of geomaterials in the field. It says in the field here, we've also got a little bit of a focus on model tests as well. We go all the way from INSAR through to looking at seismic profiling of the ground, and then modeling or measuring slope failures, in this case around an oblique pipe on a slope here. This is at laboratory scale. So again, we're crossing the whole scale spectrum here from very small scale to large scale in these reports, which reflects the fact that we've got geolab facilities that go from the very small scale in the laboratory all the way to the field test sites that NGI host for us. So there'll be more on this from Team Inlay in the final talk for this session. We've got another deliverable, which I've already introduced, we're working on at the moment, which is about using high spatial density measurements for 3D laboratory experiments. So that's yet to come, and maybe this time next year, I'll give you a bit of feedback on that. In terms of impacts, what are we getting from work package 9? We've got a set of deliverables which we think provide a useful resource for inspiring project proposals, giving people a flavour of what's possible. We think we've been honestly critical about what we're capable of and what we'd like to be able to do better, and that's providing opportunities to go beyond the current state of the art, which we're starting to explore at the moment. And the idea really has been to try and develop ideas for potential collaborative projects that, as a consortium and a wider group of users, we can push forward over the remaining time of the GeoLab project itself. Just to wrap up then, what's work package 10 been doing? Well, it's developing clear and robust standards for data storage and software usage, and this is important to us because if we're going to maximize the benefit of the transnational access that we're providing via GeoLab, the best way to do that is to package up all of the data and to make that as available to other users as possible. We want to promote consistent generation of models across the facilities. We want to promote the idea of providing sufficient information with the data in order for people to be able to readily understand what the measurements are of and what they mean, and so that others can independently interpret the data. And we've been looking to provide a data storage platform for this, which we are now doing via Zenodo. In terms of deliverables then, we've got various reports, which I'm not going to go into in great detail here, but there are guidelines available on the knowledge platform for how to manage your data within a transnational access project. There is a report on exactly what the minimum data might be required for a repository of data on our chosen Zenodo platform. And then we've got various other guidelines on things like digital object identifiers and other aspects related to the management and storage of data. We've also got a deliverable on protocols for consistent model building across facilities. And one of our joint research activities coming forward over the next year or so is to look at how effective those protocols are. So we're going to do a round robin experiment looking at trying to simulate in the centrifuge across various facilities the behavior of a very simple pile problem. And so that's really going to test how good these protocols actually are in reality. And then finally, what's starting to come together at the moment is this virtual access to a database on calibrated material properties. Many of us are using the same materials or very similar materials across our various labs. So simple silica sands being one and kaolin clay being another. But we're not very good at sharing the data that we measure from those tests. And so we're trying to bring together all of the various index and element test measurements that we have for these materials and to provide a consistent set of calibrations for common numerical models. And that deliverable is ongoing and is likely to report in the next month or two. And then finally, we've got this database on the reuse of experiments. And effectively what this is going to do is just capture all of the data that's been generated by the transnational access projects that we're enabling and make clear to other geotechnical engineers in our community what is available for them to delve into and use. So in terms of impact then, we're providing these detailed guidelines in order to safeguard the data that we're generating. We're at a point now with work package 10 where we're starting to see data stored on the Zenodo platform in open access form. And we're beginning now to develop this augmented database of model calibration data and a list of data that has been generated through the project so that others can maximize the return on the investment created by the European Commission here. In summary then, our joint research activities are all front-loaded in the GeoLab project, and so they're now approximately 3/4 complete. We needed to do this in order to provide this foundation for transnational access proposal development, And Work Package 8 and Work Package 9 have created a bunch of useful deliverables there that are allowing people to develop appropriate proposals. And TRL analysis, we hope now, is going to provide this catalyst for future R&D activities, which we'll talk about in this afternoon's session. And we've got the data storage platform via Zenodo, which we're now seeing accelerated use of as we're completing transnational access projects. Just to finish off with one slide, what are our key future joint research activities aims? Well, we want to capitalize on these outputs by hopefully generating some complementary publications in journals and conference outlets. We want to encourage collaborative R&D in key areas outlined in Work Package 9. So, listen to the 3 talks that are going to come in the remainder of this session. If there are ideas that come from them that you're interested in being involved in, come and talk to us about developing collaborative research. There's lots of opportunity to connect with us here in GeoLab on areas we have common interest. We just want to now hammer home this idea that we need to make the data that we generated through transnational widely available. And so we're promoting the use of our Zenodo platform to safeguard the data storage for the long term. And as I mentioned, we've got this idea of having a round-robin pile testing activity across the transnational access facilities to test our protocols for model development. So they're the key things that are going to come. So although we're 3/4 done in terms of deliverables, we're now at a real crossroads where we've got an opportunity and lots of time input remaining to really catalyze and go beyond the current state of the art. And so that's really what the remainder of this session is about, to give you a flavor of what we might do together. And then hopefully catalyze conversations in that vein. So with that, I'm going to hand over firstly to Miguel Cabrera, who's going to give us a talk on the first deliverable I mentioned from Work Package 9. So Miguel, over to you.